We live in a world where we're obsessed with creating content. A very small number of us, maybe even of you, create something that actually lasts. So what makes your story matter? This is They Call Me Mr. You, the podcast where perspective is the purpose. Our guest today has mastered the art of storytelling, giving stories a cultural impact with expertise on turning ideas into legacy. We have with us today Grammy and Emmy-nominated writer, producer, and author, Maxim Langstaff with us. Maxim, it's good to have you here, sir. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Good to have you here. All right, let's jump in, man. So you do a lot of, you have your hands on music and culture for sure. You work with a lot of big names. I've heard names such as Elton John, the Beatles, John Denver. That's kind of in my my upbringing. What surprised you the most about the people that the world considers legendary? What did you learn that may be enlightening to our audience?
They're just like you and me.
I love it.
In other words, we are the ones who make them icons. We're the ones who put them up on the pedestal. We're the ones who say, oh, whatever. But let me tell you something. Paul McCartney is a musician. He's a songwriter. He goes into the studio almost every day and he fiddles around. So they don't see themselves as icons. They're really the top ones. I always say there's sort of a tier. It goes from what I call icon, then you go to superstar, then you go to star, and then you go to, someone who's famous or whatever. And I've worked with all the different levels. The most difficult ones are the ones who think they're superstars. You get to the icon level, and they tend to be the most humble of all of them. And they tend to be people who are very, very smart. I mean, the thing about these people is that a lot of young singer-songwriters and artists don't appreciate the fact that they think that they have an idea. They think they have a project. They think they have a property. They've created something. They're very excited about it. And they think, wow, love me. And they don't understand what they fail to do is they fail to learn the business. They fail to learn the business that they're going into. And the business for any creative artist, from my perspective, is to communicate. Your job is to be a communicator, to communicate. Otherwise, you can sing in the shower, which is good. I'm very good at that. But I think, I think that's an important thing to sort of take on. But they're just like us. I mean, Paul McCartney treats me the same way he treats anybody. John Denver treated everybody the same way. These people tend to be very, 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 very smart. They know their business. They know what they're doing, and and then they're committed to it. And they also, John used to say to me two things which were very intriguing. One was, he said, you have to be kind and thoughtful and considerate of the people as you're going up the ladder, because you're going to see them when you come down, because you will come down. He said, I was the biggest selling artist in the world in the early to mid 70s. He said, I knew at that point there was only one place to go. You can't last up there. The second thing he said about his work was, I asked him about, how do you know if you're any good? How do you know if you've written a good song? And as you know, he wrote "Take Me Home, Country Roads" and a lot of stuff like that. He said, when it becomes yours. So it goes back to that communicating thing. In other words, I've written a lot of great songs that I really love. He said, but I know I've written a great song when it's no longer my song. It's out there in the world and people are listening to it and they're loving it and it's having some meaning or impact for them. That's the definition of a good song. That's different from the craft of writing a song. But there's we don't have as many great songwriters as we used to have. We don't.
Absolutely. My next question may, kind of help flush some of that out. I'm gonna stay on John Denver for just a moment. Like I said, that's my era. I know we crossed a lot of eras since then. A lot of musical styles. A lot has changed for sure. What do you remember about that time frame and what you learned from him regarding music, conservation, etc., that you believe would benefit those that never heard his music? What do you think would be a selling point if it was your job to sell today's era, if you will, today's musical ear on John Denver's work? How would you sell that?
Well, I would say, for starters, it's very difficult to argue that he's not one of the greatest songwriters of the second half of the 20th century. You can't say that. The guy who wrote Take Me Home Country Roads, Annie's Song, Leaving on a Jet Plane, Thank God I'm a Country Boy. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And the guy, you can say what you want, you can feel what you want, but I have learned that John was never interested in being hip and cool, and neither am I. He was never interested in following the latest trend. In fact, he was always sort of an outsider in many respects. And his music, he took a very different kind of a path, but his music, I think, it ignited something in all of us. What did it ignite? Why does his music matter? I'll tell you why. Because in the 1970s, the idea of conservation and the environment, all that kind of stuff, was mostly schools, academia, or scientists and people like that. When John Denver, what he did was he popularized that ethic. He popularized it. The sheer power of his ability to reach people made people, it became a popular thing. And so you and me generally started to talk about this stuff. And the songs that he writes, they're very aspirational. They're not necessarily what his life is, it's what he hopes for in his life. So a love song isn't necessarily recounting his love, it's recounting, some are, but it's sort of having a dream of what it could be. And I think we all have those aspirations. And he was able to create a bridge of empathy that most artists can't do today. Most artists today, a lot of artists, they can write a song, they have an agenda, and their song sort of speaks to that. And that's fine, but it ultimately isn't going to resonate in the long term. I think that John wanted to reach everybody. He didn't want to just reach one particular group of people. He wanted everybody, and he wanted to create, he was a brilliant communicator. If you went to see John Denver in concert in Madison Square Garden, you were sure he was singing just to you. That's a gift. When I did the Wildlife concert, I remember the broadcaster said, well, we have to have some guest artists. I said, why? He said, no one has ever sustained a 2-hour show on television by themselves. You have to have a guest artist. They wanted me to get Whitney Houston or someone like that. I'm not kidding. And so I pushed back. And I'll never forget, so we were in Sony Studios, and all the Sony music executives were there, and John had come in with the band, and James Burton was there, and Jim Horn. I mean, it's incredible musicians, right, in his band. I mean, people who pay attention to John and his music, and they look at the musicians who played with him, they're the best that we've ever had. And Hal Blaine on drums. So we were in the studio. It was this little small space. It wasn't very big, barely enough room for him and the band, and then we were going to rehearse in there. And maybe 6 or 8 people. That was it. So we're all crammed in, standing around. John is there, in front of the mic, and there's, not more than 10 feet between you and him. And he launched into a song. And the Sony executives fled the room, and I could see them. They were all on the phone in the hallway, going, "Holy shit! You're not going to believe this guy! Unbelievable! I've never seen anything like it." Because John had this power, his extraordinary power, which I think you can see in the Wildlife concert. He really connected to people, and even on camera, he would look right at the camera. He breaks the fourth wall. Most musicians can't do that or sustain that.
Oh yeah.
So it was the first concert ever on television that with one solo artist and no guests. And but I think his music is his command of melody may only be surpassed by Paul McCartney. Elton John certainly is up there, but these guys have an extraordinary command of melody. And when you know what music is rhythm, melody, and harmony. That's it. Which the cool thing about music is that there's only 12 notes. 12 notes. That's it. Just 12 notes, right? Yep. And every song you've ever heard and every song you will ever hear is contained within those 12 notes. And to write something that's original, that is powerful and meaningful, like Take Me Home Country Roads, I mean, who does that? I mean, they were singing Take Me Home Country Roads at the World Cup recently. It became the theme song of the American team. And then in the Super Bowl last year, do you remember in the middle of the Super Bowl halftime? I don't know what it was. We had this big fancy halftime show, and all that's great with the latest flavor of the month. But then the entire stadium starts singing "Take Me Home Country Roads." That's how you know you're an icon. Somebody said to me, "How do you know an artist is an icon?" I said, "Go to your dentist. Go to the supermarket. You hear that song in the supermarket or at your dentist's office? That means they penetrated our
made
culture. They penetrated our culture. It's a whole different. They've had a cultural impact, not just a music impact. There's lots of music superstars. I don't know if we're ever going to be going into the dentist's office and listening to Madonna. I'm sorry. She's got a big album out now. Isn't that wonderful? I'm not diminishing her, but I'm just saying it's a different caliber. It's a different scale.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the artists today are manufactured by the record companies. You get teams of people, teams of this, teams of that, engineers. In the golden age, when you think of Elton John had a guy named Gus Dudgeon, was his arranger and producer. The Beatles had Sir George Martin, arranger and producer. Billy Joel had Phil Ramone, arranger and producer. John Denver had Milt Oken, arranger and producer. All of those guys were music prodigies in their own right. They all came out of Juilliard or the Guildhall School or these amazing classical, great musical institutions, Berkeley. And nowadays, most producers don't have those backgrounds. They don't know music very well. I don't know. I'll finish with this last thought. But do you remember recently the New York Times came out with a list of the 30 greatest living songwriters?
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, it came out and it's been scathing reviews, and they should. I mean, these people are morons. Not one person on the committee was a musician or came out of the music business. It's like,
interesting.
And the people, they left out people like Billy Joel. They left out James Taylor.
That's the problem for me right there. That's a big problem for me right there. You leave out Billy Joel. That's a problem. You listen to Galvin immediately.
Right. I mean, it's embarrassing. And then Rolling Stone magazine puts out these lists, the greatest guitarists of all time, and it's all skewed for today. I remember talking to Eric Clapton, and Eric, I said to Eric, in the 60s, Eric, they were spray painting all over London, Clapton is God, the greatest guitarist. He goes, the greatest guitarist is Jimi Hendrix. And I said, really? He says, yeah, I knew Jimmy well. And I said to him, was he that good? He said, he was unbelievable. He was otherworldly. You couldn't believe what he was doing with the guitar and rock music. You couldn't do it. And so he said, and then he said, and I said, well, I love your blues. I love, we're talking about that and everything. He goes, that's great, Max. He said, but the bottom line is, if you love it, don't listen to me. Go listen to the people I listen to. Go listen to the originators, the Robert Johnsons of this world, the Muddy Waters, all those guys. He said, that stuff will blow your mind. And it's interesting because there's a music side, and obviously musicians need an industry. But in the 60s and the 70s, and even a little bit into the 80s, there were music companies and there were record stores, and music was being made by producers and arrangers who loved music, and music executives who loved music. Now music companies are run by liquor companies and hedge funds, and they're not even music people. So it's the business has changed radically. But John Denver came up in an area where I said to somebody, I was giving a talk, and I said, if John Denver released an album that sold as many as Taylor Swift did, his record company would have dropped him. I said the amount of records that John Denver had to sell in the most competitive time, which is in the 70s, in the history of recorded music, I mean, you had to be really good, because he's competing with Stevie Wonder, he's competing with Joni Mitchell, he's competing with you name it, the Wings, Boston. The competition was insane. Yeah. And so today there's almost no competition because, first of all, young people can't break into the business, new young singer-songwriter. There's never been more talent than there is today, but these kids can't get arrested. And so what we get is this stuff that's being given to us by industrial, stuff. It's I don't know. I have to be careful what I say about Taylor Swift because she's quite a wonderful girl. But I don't know. Are we going to be listening to her music in 50 years? I can't even hum a single song of hers. Can you?
No.
Yeah, there you go.
We can't go there, but we're not.
Right.
Let's keep moving. All right. So with the time we have left, I want to ask you a couple more questions if I can. So
we can go for an hour if you want. I'm fine.
I don't have an hour. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. That's good. Go ahead.
In regards to music, because I spent some time in that industry as well for a little while as a singer and a songwriter. What would you tell somebody who wants to create meaningful work in a world that's kind of overflowing with AI content and some of the things that you were talking about? Because I know people who are watching and listening, I know some are in the music, some are aspire to be producers and write their own music. I'm surrounded by friends who do the same thing, but I know that AI somewhat offers an easy route in regard to what you may just be describing.
It's way worse than that. Way worse than that. You're being very kind. So let me ask you a question, and that'll be part of my answer, which is why? You there?
I'm still with you.
I've lost you. Hold on. Oh, sorry about that. That was weird. Hold on. I apologize. Okay, a little edit for you. Why did you make music? Why did you do it?
Music was the background of my child. I just love music, so I wanted to be around it. It made me feel good. It made me my world. Yeah.
So you love doing it, right?
Absolutely.
So here's the big kahuna here. Ready? AI is absolutely not compatible with creativity. Understood. What do you mean by that, Max? You made music because you loved making music, right? You loved the process of writing a song, of making music, recording it, whatever, playing it, whatever you were doing, okay? AI is all about taking that process away from you. AI's machine says, I'll do the process for you, I'll give you an outcome. So all of a sudden, because AI is all outcome driven, if Paul McCartney doesn't make music because he wants to be famous and rich, that's an affect, okay? As Mark Knopfler said to me when we were working together, he said, fame is the garbage pail of being a music artist. He said you need it because it helps sell records and things, but it's horrible. He said that you do it because you're passionate about it and you love it and you love making music. Well, AI says, I'll make the music for you. I'll do it all for you. And then I'll give you an outcome that you can fiddle with a little bit, whatever. So it takes you, the artist, out of the creative process. So would Paul McCartney make music if he couldn't do it himself? If he just turned some idea over to a machine? No, he wouldn't. No, none of these people would. They're not motivated to do anything. Herbie Hancock is gonna like let a machine. His joy, Louis Armstrong, their joy comes from making music, from engaging in the process. And I think that for a lot of young people who are thinking about ambition, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be this, bling, 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 whatever it is. If they're not passionate about the process of actually creating this stuff, or aren't willing to commit themselves to learning how to do it and getting somewhere, they're not going to amount to a hill of beans. They should go do something else.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, man. You have an accomplished career. There's no question about that part. We won't even have enough time to cover all that you've done. What do you hope, Maxim, that people are going to remember about the contribution you made, not so much to the industry, but kind of to our world? What do you want people to remember?
Well, in my own work, there's a couple things. I don't chase trends. I don't chase what's hip and cool. I'm not interested in being the coolest guy I never was. What I want to do is, I'm like John Denver. I want to reach everybody. I want to create projects, and I do create projects that are evergreens. The Beatles reached everybody. John Denver reached everybody. Yeah. That's a different kind of an artist. They and on the power of their work, not on them, not turning them into some kind of a streaming God knows what, or some kind of a social media influencer. They actually do something and contribute. So my work is all about, if I could have the person who is experiencing the work that I've done get a little bit of joy and maybe just a teeny sprinkling of insight, that I consider that a home run. And I want all my work, I make sure that what I'm working on, the projects I take on, can deliver that. And if I can do that, I'll close with this, which human beings don't operate from facts. We think we do. We don't operate from facts. We operate from belief. So belief, we believe this, we believe that, and this is our beliefs. Our beliefs are what sort of determine what we do and how we do it. It's unfortunate because it puts us in the messes that we're in. But if that's the case, then storytelling becomes all that much more important. So what kind of storyteller do I, Max, want to be? Do I want to reach everybody? Do I want to communicate with the world something that matters? Maybe that's something that can enrich their lives. So that's what I'm trying to do. I've got a book that I just did. It came out. It's #1 on the bestseller list. You know, I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun to read, but I think it's got some nourishment in it too. It's worth reading. I think you'll walk away finishing the book thinking about it a little bit, and it'll stay with you a little bit, as opposed to just some entertainment thing.
I love it. And it links up on the screen to your book as well. For those that are listening to us and not watching us, you can find it in the comments section, of course, as well as the show notes. The link to his book is on the screen. Final question for you, Maxim. Give us some thought real quick if you can, please. If your life story were reduced to a single lesson, I know it's going to be hard, but this is just theoretically speaking. If your life story was reduced to a single lesson for the next generation, what do you want them to take from it? I heard so much your heart about the eras that have gone before us and how the music has been timeless, creativity, things of that nature, even some things I learned about you from a standpoint of wildlife conservation, things that are close to your heart. If your life story could be reduced to a single lesson for the next generation, what do you want them to get today?
I think, life is hard. It's meant to be. It's tough, and you have to be tough. I think the one thing that I have that has contributed more than anything else to my success has been curiosity. Having the courage to be curious, to learn about what you don't know, rather than always be trying to validate yourself by what you do know or what you think you know. So go learn about something you don't know. Expand yourself. My curiosity has been the key to my success, because with that curiosity, it allows me to shift and to adapt and to go this way and go that way and do different things. And it's so much fun to find out all this new stuff. We're not going to get another shot at this thing called life. It isn't a dress rehearsal. So you got to go for it. You got to have a lot of courage, and you've got to be very curious.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. The stories that you share, that if only we have more time. But I'm so grateful for your thoughtful perspective, man. You're definitely somebody who has worked with some great names. You heard that throughout the podcast, and you're down to earth. You got substance on you, man. And I definitely.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I'm gonna hire you as my PR agent. You're awesome. You're great. Thank you. And I think if you want me back some point, talk about some other things, I'd be delighted to. Just let me know.
That'd be great to do it, man. Grammy and Emmy-nominated writer, producer, and author Maxim Langstaff. If you're watching this for the first time and this episode, for any reason, resonates with you, by all means, don't let it be the end of the story. Maxim's information is in the show notes and in the comment section. You can grab it, get access to him, and perhaps have him answer any questions you may have, or you can reach me through the same way, through social media, as well as the comment section in the chat. Love to hear from you guys soon. Maxim Langstaff, I'm Mr. U. Thanks for watching. Call me Mr. U, where perspective is the purpose. Have a great